Well, state houses could soon be the new front line in the fight to repeal the overhaul of health care. A slew of new Republican governors now set to take the reins coast to coast, many of them planning now to block key portions of this law, possibly preempting the federal legislation altogether. Hugh Hewitt, radio talk show host and professor of the Chapman University School of Law, joins me now. Hugh, what I found interesting about this is this one political science professor at Rutgers says, and I quote, "The governors could, without defying federal law, simply implement this law inefficiently, throw sand in the gears." And he and others like him are more and more starting to say that is the best way to go about stopping this health care law, no matter what happens in the U.S. Congress.
Well, you know, Megan, good to see you. I think that he's right. The governors, especially the 11 new Republican governors who took over for Democrats in Tuesday's wipeout, have a lot of ability to stop Obamacare. Their first choice, though, is will they join the lawsuits that are out there? There's a Virginia lawsuit. There's a Florida lawsuit. Ken Cuccinelli, the wonderful Attorney General of Virginia, is happy to welcome people into his lawsuit. Bill McCollum, Attorney General in Florida, happy to welcome these states in. And I believe they've got great grounds under the 10th Amendment and under the Commerce Clause. As you well know, these are very open issues.
But it doesn't advance their cause at all for them to join those lawsuits. Yes, I mean, it's like tells the courts that more governors feel the same way as Virginia's and Florida's states do, but attorney generals do. But this guy and others like him are now positing that the governors, without joining any lawsuit, can stop this, as he put it, throw sand in the gears. Hugh, how?
Well, they have lots of options. They can refuse to take the Medicaid opportunity to accept funding. I believe Scott Walker in Wisconsin has specifically said that. But I'd push back. I think their first choice is to join these lawsuits, not just because of the relief that will be granted them if, in fact, they're successful, but as a signal to help, for example, Leader McConnell's statement at the Heritage Foundation yesterday. I've linked it over at my blog today. They're going to fight on the beach. They're going to fight on the field. They're going to fight on every bridge. And the Republican governors have to join in that effort to say complete repeal. If they don't, I think they'll pay a political price. In fact, Megan, I was in New Jersey a couple of weeks ago, and some of the Tea Party activists were critical of a guy in my neck of the woods. Chris Christie looks wonderful, but Chris has not joined this lawsuit, and as a result, they're very upset with him on that ground. So I think these Republican governors have to stop Obamacare by refusing every dollar that's offered. That's number one. Joining the lawsuits and then urging their congressional members to allow the votes, especially the senators in places like, for example, John Kasich in Ohio can lean on Sherrod Brown, who's going to be a very vulnerable Republican in 2012. And Kasich, the new governor, he's going to be an extraordinary governor, can say to Sherrod Brown, Sherrod, you'd better vote to repeal Obamacare to allow those votes to go forward. So there are lots of ways in which these new Republican governors can help in the fight, and I think they're going to do it.
Does it get to the point, let's say it does get to the point, all right, so before we move on from the lawsuit, it does get to the point where you've got, you know, some high number of governors, some high number of states, you know, we're talking more than, I don't know, 30 states that are possibly joining in this lawsuit. Does it become harder for ultimately the Supreme Court to say, too bad? I mean, I don't want to say the will of the people is on the side of this health care law, because the polls don't really suggest that. But the Congress, the president have spoken. It's a federal law, and you're stuck with it.
Well, you know, there's an old saying, I'm sure you learned it in law school, too, from Mr. Dooley, that the Supreme Court follows the election results, too. And they're looking at a sea of red that swept over the country. Yes, part of it was the jobs issue. A lot of it was Nancy Pelosi's arrogance and Harry Reid's cluelessness and the president's distance from the people. But a lot of it was Obamacare, Megan. And I believe you've got 4 justices who will strike down the individual mandate. I heard the Cuccinelli analysis about Justice Kennedy, and I believe he's right that Justice Kennedy will join in striking down that mandate. And when that happens,
that's 5.
There's an issue of severance. I mean, it's complicated. We don't want to get in the tall weeds here. But when you take the heart and soul out of Obamacare, the individual mandate, and the Supreme Court looks around at the shattered states and 30 different states and the red tide, there's a good chance that they're going to say, start over, Congress, not do a jam down.
Well, the other thing, Stu, Hugh, the other thing that's interesting, though, is even separate and apart from the lawsuit, they're talking now about how the governors could basically handicap this legislation in various different ways. They're saying, A, they could seek waivers from some of its provisions. We've already actually seen that attempted. They could veto state legislation related to it. They could opt to slow the implementation of it. they could basically work with their state legislatures to sort of pick at pieces of it so that it becomes ineffective in their state and isn't working right. They could basically thwart it without having to directly thumb, the eye of the federal government. And if that happens, I don't know that it's going to be great for the nation, but it could be hard for those who are trying to implement this massive bill to do so effectively.
It would be so great for the nation. And here's what I do. If you're one of these new governors, you appoint yourself a new Secretary of Stopping Obamacare. You got to find the smartest lawyer you can in your state, and you name them the Secretary of Stopping Obamacare. And just as you said, you instruct every bureaucrat in the state bureaucracy to resist. You tell them that this is a question of federalism, it's a question of first principles, and you lay out the fact that when you see Obamacare rolling out, destroying the insurance of so many people, seniors getting thrown off the rolls, it becomes politically very potent, and you'll convert some of these Democrat senators like a Tester in Montana. Is Tester really going to stand by Obamacare and get wiped out in 2 years? Ben Nelson's already doomed. He's dead man walking in the Senate when it comes to re-election as a result of Obamacare. I think these governors have a lot that they can do, including obstructionism of the highest sort, the best sort, obstructionism based upon principle, and they can be very effective.
You got a situation here where even if the Senate and the House passed a law to repeal Obamacare or President Obama's health care law, the president's not going to sign it. So more and more folks are looking to these governors to see what is possible. Hugh Hewitt, thank you, sir.
Megan, always a pleasure.
Likewise.
And today, health insurance reform is the law of the land all across America. Yes, we did.